But first, more revelations today about the shonky state of Victoria. Group voting tickets allow preferences to be manipulated and accumulated so that candidates with tiny first preference votes can graft their way into the upper house of Parliament. The only place that still has these group voting tickets is Victoria. And in today's Herald Sun, there are explosive revelations about why this is the case. Preference whisperer Glenn Drury, a long-time political operative who's been haunting the back room of parliaments, state and federal, for many years, has been caught on tape bragging about his latest dubious play, and it's a shocker. In the tape, Drury explains how he's used Victoria's electoral system to put into the state upper house a group of candidates, he calls them the family, specifically to help the Andrews government get its contentious legislation through the parliament.
If you win, you'll give me 55K. Everybody gives me 5K as a member of the family.
Okay.
I'm not going to charge you that. If you win, you can give it to me. What I would suggest you do if you win is, I know my way around the parliament. I know my way around the legislation. I know all the players.
That's Drury in the blue shirt, and he specifically names the MPs he helped last election, including Transport Matters Party, Rod Barton, the Darren Hinch Party, Tanya Maxwell, Stuart Grimley, Lib Dems, David Limerick, Tim Quilty, Sustainable Australia Party, Clifford Hayes, the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, Jeff Borman, and finally the Animal Justice Party's Andy Medic. He also says he's helped the so-called Reason Party, you probably know it as the old Sex Party, led by Fiona Patten.
No, I've put people in Parliament who have been executives in airlines, a divorced mother who hadn't had a job, in 20 years, a former prostitute, Fiona Patten.
And Drury says this time around he's got more MPs and would-be MPs under his control.
The rest I control.
Gotcha.
Everybody. I'll be filling in the GBTs.
Now, none of these are exactly household names, but part of Drury's MO is to pick a party name that will resonate with switched-off voters who basically make up their minds in the polling booth. And to win power, all he needs is just their one vote in a box at the top of the ballot paper. Drury even admits that he's behind the sacked Daniel Andrews Party, and that it was set up with the sole purpose of denying votes to other protest parties like One Nation or Clive Palmer.
Every other post was sack Dan Andrews, sack Dan Andrews, sack Dan Andrews. Ha ha. We're going to form the Sack Dan Andrews Party. We did. We, me and my allies. That's been formed because if that gets a decent draw, it's going to completely usurp Clive, One Nation and poor little Aiden.
According to the Victorian Electoral Commission, only around 8% of Victorian voters vote under the line, meaning only about 8% bothered to number at the last election every box on the ballot, ranking their preferred candidates. The other 90-odd% of voters, they just put one number in the top of the box at the top of the ballot paper. Now, a lot of them vote for a major party when they do that, but Drury's game is to chase those that don't. The disengaged voters who vote for a party based on the name that grabs their attention. The Marijuana Party, let's say. The Sack Dan Andrews Party. The 3-day weekend party. You get my drift. And once he's got them to vote for one of his so-called family of parties, thanks to the complex preference flows he's worked out, the votes then cascade down with all the deals that he's done. And it stands to earn him tens of thousands of dollars. It's been a system he's operated, as he bragged in this leaked video, since the late 1990s.
We'd formed Save the Forest, the Women's Party, the Four Drive Party, the Gun Owners Party, the Marijuana, the Gay and Lesbian, Save the Forest, and so on and so on. What are we forming today? Oh, shit, I don't know. And I said, the 3-day weekend party. What? Yeah, let's do it. It went really well.
Drury also makes it clear that Victoria still has group voting tickets because of a sweetheart deal between him and the Premier to deny preferences to the Greens. As Drury explains, apart from creating a block of upper house MPs personally indebted to him, His objective at the last election was to give Premier Daniel Andrews a pliable upper house, and it's still his game.
I'm focused on the longer game, and that is we've got to give the government, which will be the Andrews government, we've got to give them a crossbench they can work with.
During the lockdowns, I often discussed here, didn't I, the appalling way the Victorian upper house rolled over and did their dirty deals to cave in on pandemic legislation. We never got the full details of what was promised to them for their vote. But listening to Drury, you could hear just how rotten the whole system really is. And it's not just in Victoria where he's worked the system, but also in Canberra too.
A minor party has had the balance of power in this country at a state or federal level for nearly 25 years. Yeah. And my fingerprints have been on almost all of them. And that's pretty good. And that has impacted a whole ton of things, like the Medicare co-payment. It didn't happen. Like Christopher Pyne's education reforms, didn't happen. Like Clean Energy Finance Corp, we saved it. Arena, research into that stuff, we saved it. And on and on and on it goes. My opponents would say, state of emergency in Victoria. You kept it going. Well, yeah, Rod Barton and Andy Medic voted for it.
That last example was the most controversial, wasn't it? Those emergency powers that then meant the Premier could reintroduce all the measures that had locked up Victorians for months on end, the curfews, 5-kilometre travel bans, all passed in secret deals by the Drury crossbench in the middle of the night. Legislation that was universally condemned by the legal profession. These recordings published in the Herald Sun today have Drury telling a candidate from the Angry Victorians party that he'd expect to be paid $55,000 if he helped them gain a seat. And it seems he was explaining to the candidate just how parliamentary entitlements could be manipulated to get him paid.
I would urge you to take me on as an advisor and consultant. You can pay me through the administration fund and I'd be charging you roughly $1,000 a week. And I think you probably only need me for a year and a couple of weeks.
Now, to its credit, the Angry Victorians party says it wants nothing to do now with Drury, and they've referred him to the Electoral Commission and the Anti-Corruption Commission IBAC for investigation, as have now the Liberal Party and the Greens. Tonight on this program, we'll speak to one of the men you've just seen there on the video, Chris Burson from the Angry Victorians party. As it stands, the Liberals, if elected, say they'll scrap the group voting ticket and end Drury's manipulation of voter preferences. When pushed to the same point today, though, the Premier refused to commit to reform.
Don't think I've ever met the bloke. I don't believe I've ever met him, spoken to him. I don't know him. And preferences are dealt with by the party, and we do not engage his service. I'm not for a moment diminishing the concern that people have or the importance of having that review. That's why we have one after every election. You don't, seriously, you can all shout over each other, and what wonderful viewing that must make at home.
You've had 8 years and 2 of these post-election inquiries. Why do you need a third post-election inquiry?
We've had 2 elections, Rachel, because the inquiry is going to be conducted. I think I've gone to the merits of the inquiry and the process, and I really don't have anything further to say. And I've answered that question a couple of times. Let's wait and see what the report says.
Look at him today. He won't reform it. He will not reform it. So if you think Drury's game stinks, if you think it diminishes our democracy, then there's another reason for you to vote the Premier out. And don't take my word for it. Here's the ABC election guru Anthony Green, who tweeted this today. He says elections are run to elect a parliament representative of votes cast by the public, not a tiny cabal of preference wheelers and dealers. He went further and said, so after more than 2 decades of rorts and abuse through the group voting ticket preference deals, and the resulting abolition of these group voting ticket deals in New South Wales, which banned them in 2003, South Australia banned them in 2018, WA in 2021, and of course the Senate in 2016, he says the response of the Victorian Parliament has been shrug. There he is. Anthony Green says it all.